So we began to pray about that and seek the Lord as to what to do. We prayed very hard. We prayed very diligently about it. And the Lord laid it upon our hearts that we needed to run for the office as a state representative, because I felt like that the people of the state were not being represented by Christian people with Christian values and Christian morals and standards that coincide with scriptures. I've seen a lot of things happening in the Capitol here that I disagreed with. I've seen the direction of the state going contrary to what I believe, contrary to God's word. And so upon, again, much prayer, I decided to run for that position. There was an incumbent that had been there many, many years. I'm a Republican. The incumbent was a Democrat that had served in that position, and he was an individual that was not a bad individual, not a bad person at all. He had every opportunity to make some very crucial votes up here to promote life, to promote different things that I stood for, and also to vote against things that we didn't stand for. He never would make that stand. He would make so many non-votes and kept getting elected term after term after term. And so when I decided to run, I was a very unknown. The districts in Kentucky are supposed to be fairly equal in population. The one I represent actually has about 47,000 people in that. And so we began to talk about the possibility of running. Once that we decided to run in the 2014 race, I was unknown. Nobody knew who it was. We filed for the office. Once we filed for the office and my name got out there on the ballot, I began to work it very hard and begin to tell people who I was, what I did, what kind of church I went to, what kind of church I pastored, what I believed in, what I stood for. And amazingly, and I know that God was in this, people of all faiths and all walks and people that weren't even Christians began to get behind me. They began to support me. They began to encourage me. And I come from a district that the registration of the district that I represented at that time was almost 80% Democrat, almost an 80-20 split. And so it had to be by the hand of God that caused so many of those individuals that would just always go in and pull that same lever every single year, no matter who the candidate was. I'm telling you, I know that it was God's hand that got in that race and brought me to this office, brought me to this position. I'm honored to serve the people. I'm honored to represent my people. But far more than that, I am so honored that I can bring the name of Jesus Christ into this Capitol building, into this annex. I've been afforded the opportunity to do so many things. God has given me the privilege to share the message of the gospel with so many people. I guess, again, I'm on my third term. I was reelected again in November, so I'm now serving in my third term. One of the things that sticks out probably in the 3 terms that now I'm working on is one day in the House chamber, there was a very, very controversial piece of legislation that was being discussed. People were angry. People were upset. It was getting kind of vicious, the back and forth. I don't really say a whole lot on the House floor. My positions are generally, I take a position and I don't really get up and speak about that position too much unless I feel like that I need to. And on occasions I do. But on that particular issue, on our desk that we sit at, we have a button that we can push. And when we push that button, we're recognized by the Speaker of the House to address the body. So I pushed my button and waited my turn, and my turn came 15 or 20 minutes because there was a lot of discussion. When I was called on by the Speaker at that particular time, I just stood up, and really it was honestly rather noisy there. But I asked for the attention of the body, and I said this. I may not have said it exactly word for word like I'm about to say it, but I said it in this manner. I said, every morning before I come into this chamber, when I come from this building right here, this annex building, which my office is upstairs, I said, every day before I come into this House chamber to vote on issues, I bow my head at my desk and ask the Lord to give me the guidance, the direction of how to vote on certain issues, on these issues. I shared that with the people, and it honestly got so quiet. You've heard the proverbial saying, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. It got so quiet that you could hear a pin drop that day. As I said that, and that's all I had to say basically, and I didn't say it for this purpose, but everybody in that chamber began to applaud.
Amen.
And I sat right behind a certain representative here in Kentucky that is very liberal, has views of things that probably none of us in this room would adhere to. This individual has proposed some of the most hideous pieces of legislation that you can imagine. And I looked over at this individual to see what their reaction was. And that individual was absolutely staring a hole through me. And I just glanced at this individual. All of a sudden, they put their hands up and started to clap. Now, I don't know if they were clapping that I was getting ready to sit down, what the purpose of the applause was, but I thought in my mind, maybe, just maybe, I had an impact upon that person. If I never pass a piece of legislation here, which I have been afforded that opportunity to, but if I never pass a piece of legislation, it's about spreading the message that Jesus Christ, here to be one of his spokesmen, that when given that opportunity, and I've been given that opportunity to share that with so many people that I would have never been afforded that opportunity to do. So today, seeking an office as a Christian is something I want to encourage people to do. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a Sunday school teacher. We just need people of faith to take that direction, to step out and say, serve not only my people, but I want to be a representative, not just for the people, but a representative of the Lord. It takes a lot of courage. When I made this decision, I honestly had some people that walked away from the church I pastor. I was told that you shouldn't be involved in politics, and they use the term religion. I don't really like that term religion. But I shouldn't be involved in the church and politics. But I knew that I was supposed to because the Bible says, and the government shall be on his shoulder. I'm just one voice of 138 people. We've got a wonderful brother right here, Pastor Chris Fugate, is going to come and speak to you and share his experience with you. And then in about 10 minutes left, we'll take questions if you'd like to ask us questions. So I just wanted to share that quick testimony with you, how I got here, how the Lord put me here. I know he put me here, how I also have a great responsibility here as well to share that message. So I thank you today, brother.
Glad to be here today. I appreciate y'all coming out, and I'll talk real fast. I was raised in church. My dad was a pastor. Passed away when I was 15. A state police sergeant put me under his wing. At that age of 15, went on to become a state trooper, and I worked for the Kentucky State Police for 22 years. About 2 years before I retired, God called me to preach. In 2011, December the 4th of 11, we were able to start the Gospel Light Baptist Church in Hazard in an old bar building that was called the Hillbilly Palace. All my life, I've heard people say Christians should not be in politics. I think there's two lies the devil has told that we as Christians believe. The first one is that revival can never happen. I believe revival can happen. Number two is Christians shouldn't be involved in politics. If you go back before the founding of our country, right before the founding of our country in 1776, and you look up the Black Robed Regiment, the Black Robed Regiment was a group of preachers that wore their robes to church, and they would preach. But under those robes, they had guns. And they led the men of the colonies to fight against the British who were coming to take them back. The purpose of the church and of preachers is to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Black Robed Regiment preachers knew that. The second most important thing for a preacher to do is to fight for the right to spread the gospel of Jesus. When our nation was founded, it was founded upon the principles of God's Word. The principles of God's Word. This nation was founded upon that. If you look throughout the history, preachers and Christians have been involved in the founding of our country and all through the ages of our country. Where did we go wrong? Why is our country a mess today? Because we as Christians sat back and we allowed people who don't believe in the God of the Bible, who don't believe in Jesus Christ as the Savior of the world, to begin to make decisions for us. And it's time, again, when I started pastoring, I never imagined in the rest of my life or eternity that I would ever run for a public office. It was not my intention. I did not seek it. I had some people approach me, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not interested. State representative, not interested. Another guy approached me. Somebody approached my brother Jeff, who pastors Claysville Road Baptist Church. He called me, and I'm like, old fella that was drowning. and the water was coming up to his house. He climbed up on top of the roof. He said, God will take care of me. And a log floated by. He didn't get on. He stayed on the roof of the house. The water kept coming up, and a boat come by. A fellow said, get on the boat. You're going to drown. He said, no, God will take care of it. Then the water come up. It was up to his neck, and a helicopter came. Dropped the rope down. I said, grab the rope. He said, no, God will take care of me. Well, he drowned. He went to heaven. He said, Lord, I thought you was going to take care of me. He said, well, I sent you a log, a boat, a helicopter. What else do you? So as many people called me, I started praying about, Lord, is this what you want? Our church, we lost several young families who moved away from Hazard because there was no jobs. Our unemployment rate is double digits, and it's really not a truthful unemployment rate because we've got so many people out of the employment. They're not seeking employment anymore. And so I just pray, so Lord, if this is what you want, I'll do it. It's a tough job, pastoring full-time and running for office and being in Frankfurt. That's a tough job. Now, God allowed me to run. I ran against a man who I know, who I've known all my life, and who I voted for several times. We were able to win by over 4,000 votes. He'd been here 8 years. And it was kind of God's stamp of approval on my election. Now, why would God want me, Pastor David Hale, and other Christians in a place of government? Well, he established three things. First, the family, government, and the church. The world is trying to corrupt, the devil is trying to corrupt all three institutions. Right. He's trying to change what the family is to not a man and a woman, but to a man and a man or a woman and a woman. That's not God's plan. God's plan is one man, one woman, Adam and Eve. Then he created the government to be upon his shoulders, as Brother David already talked about. And in the church, God established the church. Now, the world is trying to change all three of those. We as Christians have a duty. We have a duty to be involved in the political process, to be involved in trying to make a difference to keep America the way it is. I lost people in my church. It breaks my heart that they walked out the door. It really breaks my heart. But I'm thankful today that I've been able to stand for life, religious liberty, against liquor. I hate liquor. I ain't voting for liquor. I don't like gambling. I ain't for legalizing pot. Those things are vices that have destroyed the morals of our country. If you have people who don't believe in the morals of the Bible, they're not going to vote for the morals of the Bible. You have to have Christians that are involved in politics. We have to be involved, not for a political position, but for two reasons. Number one, we are ambassadors from heaven. That's what God says we are. We are ambassadors. Number two, to help our people. I don't want to be here if I can't stand up for God and help my people. I don't want to be here. And so God put us here. This is my second term. We just had an election in November. We were reelected, and I'm thankful to be back, to be able to stand. We've got 4 pro-life bills coming this year. One is an actual heartbeat bill. When the doctor can detect a heartbeat, it'll be illegal in Kentucky if we pass this to have an abortion. You think about the first time your child spoke to you, well, not when he or she said dad, dad, or mom, mom. The first time your baby spoke to you was when you went to the doctor, and that doctor put that ultrasound on there, and you heard a heartbeat. You know if it's a boy or girl, you knew it was alive. And so this bill will allow us to stand up for life, to stand up for what God has created. Yeah. That's my 10 minutes.
Amen.
I talked fast. I hope you listen. And we'll answer for you if you want to ask us questions. If you don't have any questions, I'm sure between two preachers we can come up.
Anybody got any questions that you'd like to ask about the process or how we got here? Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
I have a question. You guys, when you began this process, were new to the political arena. People came to you and said, will you do this? How did you finance your initial campaign? When people didn't know, I'm looking at two guys that I don't think could run for president of the United States because you don't got the pocketbook. But you won here. And I want to know how you finance that. How do you do it?
You want me to go first? When I first decided to run, as I said earlier, I was virtual unknown. I was pretty well known in my little county. Pastored the church there. I said at that time it would have been, I guess, about 17 years, and now I'm up to 21. I was known in that county in just a small segment there of people, but out into the other counties, I wasn't known. As far as financing it, I basically started financing it myself with what little finances I had to finance it. with. I'm by no means a wealthy person, far from that. I began to put a little of my own money and tried to get the word out through advertisements, a few paper advertisements, some radio commercials. That was actually going to run into a few $1,000s just to do that as minimal as I could. But then once people found out who I was and what I stood for, they began to make some donations to me, sometimes $50, $100, a couple $100. And then as I went along, and then as the party, they know who's running for these offices. They know who's running for them, and they do the polling. They do polling. And they don't tell us much about the polling that they find out, but they do polling. And once they found out that, hey, he's a viable candidate, then they begin to kick in a little bit. But I'll be very honest, it wasn't nothing to the extent of what my opponent had to spend. And I probably got outspent in my first election. I don't know exactly how much they spent on the gentleman I was running against. I probably got outspent 7 or 8 to 1 as far as the money was concerned. With God, God can take a little and do a whole lot with it. He did it with the fish and the loaves. That's the way initially for me. And then, of course, as I got elected, then more people began to donate and kick in campaign donations. That's the way I did it. I can't answer.
Same for me. Same for me. Family, friends, people that I knew to start with, the party. I told them, I don't have any money. And from there, people got to know me and people began to finance it. I sent checks back from the horse industry that sent money to me. I want their money. I don't believe in gambling, so I ain't going to take their money. That's exactly how.
I think we both probably did it pretty much the same way. I never will forget my first contribution, though, after I had filed my papers. And then I shared it with my church. And I'd only been filed for a couple of weeks. And I never will forget, after church one Sunday, this guy that attended the church, he says, man, I think that is great. And he gave me a $300 check.
Wow.
And I still remember that was the very first $300 that anybody ever contributed to my campaign. And he said, I think it is great that you are getting into this as a Christian and doing that. So, but yeah, anybody else?
I have a question. What's the atmosphere like now with their governor term is up? How's the atmosphere here in Frankfort?
Let me start. The atmosphere right now, to me, is a good atmosphere. There's some dissension, truthfully, some dissension. But the atmosphere now, and that reason I want to go first, because he was here when other governors was here, right? He knows what the atmosphere was now. I know the atmosphere now is life and religious liberty is at the top. There are some bills that our Republican counterparts have filed for legalizing marijuana, casino gambling, the sports gaming industry, that I will stand up on the floor against my party, say it's not right, and we don't need to vote that.
And we both have done that.
That's right.
And others with us.
Yeah. About 5 of us that we can, when we see each other, we'll say, hello, preacher.
The atmosphere, I came when I got elected in 2014, Steve Beshear was governor. It was just that 1 year because Governor Bevan was elected in 2015, so it was a total different atmosphere. When I first got elected and came here, I was punished. And I was punished by the leadership of the House. I really was. I'm going to just say I was treated like dirt by the leadership. Greg Stumbo was who it was. I was treated like dirt. But I endured it, didn't open my mouth a whole lot. I just did my job. But the atmosphere now with Governor Bevan is an entirely different atmosphere. There's always going to be dissension. It doesn't matter who's the leader. But it's a whole different atmosphere. I think somebody back in the back had a question. Yes, sir.
How do you find the time to pastor and do this at the same time? Because it is a full-time responsibility.
Yes, sir.
And how do you find the time to do all that?
It's tough. I think the church that Chris pastors is probably a little bit larger than the church I pastor. I have a congregation. I'm not a large church. We have about 200 people. I have a congregation of about 200 people. And it's very difficult to be a full-time pastor. I've got some good people in the church that helps me out on occasion. I get back to every service. There's a few Wednesday night services that I can't make it back to. I live about 100 miles from here. If it's necessary to be here for a crucial vote late, I have missed a few services, but very few. It is something that we just have to balance our time. There will be times that I'll have to leave here, and there's times I've had to miss a part of a date. I had to go back to see somebody that was sick, death, or something of that nature. It's really tough. It really is, but you have to manage your time and just have to trust in the Lord. I'm 62 years old. I'm getting some age on me, but God has given me the strength to continue to do that. And as long as He gives me the health and the strength, I'm going to try to do it the best I can. But the church, my church, is far more important to me than this place right here.
Follow up on yours. For me, a lot of people think we're up here all year. We're up here 30 days. We're here 4 days in January this year, 17 days in February, 9 days in March. As soon as we stop having business on the floor, I head to Hazard and I preach on Wednesday night. Our church runs about 250 to 275 right in the summer, run 325 or so. It is tough. We're not usually up here in April and May, but then June through December, we're up here about 5-6 times a month. We're up here and back. And most time, if I leave the house at 5:30 in the morning, get up here at 8, we have our meetings, committee meetings, and I'm out of here by 2, back home by 4:15, and then I do my work at the church.
It's not easy.
It takes sacrifice, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Simon. I'm an allergist and family doctor, board certified in both allergy and internal medicine. I specialize in allergy, headaches, sinus, hives, cough, asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. We're located at 1404 Browns Lane near Norton Suburban Hospital. Our phone number is 895-5088. We can see you tomorrow.
For 30 minutes. It's like a buy one, get one free, really. And we can do it because we've done it twice already. We've gone about 40 minutes, but still the same, right? We had this room reserved for myself, Scott Boland, the director of Christian Home Educators of Kentucky. I had myself, my wife, Devon Boland, and I had a homeschool mom and special needs liaison and support to CHEC, Christian Home Educators of Kentucky. Heather Walton is with us and will be here to answer questions if you have questions about special needs or anything of that nature. So how this is going to work when we start in just about 3 or 4 minutes, I'll do some introductions again and we'll get rolling with AC Donahue, who is with us. He's going to be talking about the legal requirements or what is required to homeschool in Kentucky and some about the law, some about some things that have gone on the last year as far as that is concerned, where we've interacted with the state a little bit. And then we're going to leave some time. I really wanted to have an open panel discussion in this room where we can talk about anything that you wanted to talk about, whether it be political, whether it be how to do certain things within homeschooling. How do you help with special needs? Can you write your own IEP or whatever it is? We've got people here to help with that. Whatever it is that you guys want to talk about, we'll be happy to. I wanted to leave this time for you and even give you the opportunity. Guys, there's a lot of you that come in on Capitol Day. We can't really organize a bill in this room and present it this session. I don't think we'd have time, and we probably couldn't get a sponsor. But if there's something you thought about, hey, I've thought about this, I think it would be a good piece of legislation. Somebody needs to kind of get the ball rolling. Here's an opportunity for all of us here in the Capitol to talk about it. We've got a year between now and next year, and we could actually get some things done. There's a couple things that I've thought about. One is what I would call a school choice tax credit, and it's something that HSLDA has helped other state organizations like ours present. Maybe even some states have passed. It's not really a homeschool law. It's not a Christian school law. In my mind, would be a school choice tax credit. So if your kid's in public school and you spend your dollars toward their education because they're in music and you pay for extra violin lessons, or they're on the swim team and you pay for extra coaching or classes, something like that where you invest in your child's education in some way, maybe we give a $250 tax credit and you basically produce a receipt and say, I spent this much for this thing and it would qualify for a tax credit. That's something I think a lot of homeschoolers could get behind. A lot of private schools or church schools could get behind that. A lot of times we get different ideas when you start talking about vouchers or something of that nature, because in the homeschool community and even in the church school community, I think that's an area where you're going to get really mixed emotions, and you're going to be people that are strongly against it and people that want it. So that's why I kind of suggest that one is like a tax credit. Everybody could get behind that. So that's just one of the ideas I've been rolling around in my head. And then I know recently in last year, Arizona passed what's like a diploma equivalency bill that it requires all private schools and companies, organizations to recognize homeschool or non-accredited diplomas as equivalent to public school diplomas, which isn't a problem for going to college right now, guys, because in the Higher Education Act of 1998, they pretty much said that it is discrimination to discriminate against a non-accredited diploma, whether it's from a church school or a home school or somewhere else. And that, in fact, the credentials or the standing of the school has nothing to do with the merit of the student, right? You could graduate from Harvard with a D minus and you're still a Harvard grad, but you may not be as smart as the guy that graduated from UK with an A plus, right? Because the school is accredited doesn't mean anything about the student. And so they discussed that in 1998. Federal government said, you know what? Hey, here's the Higher Education Act of 1998. You can't do this. You can't discriminate. So if a college accepts federal student aid, they can't tell you something like, sorry, we don't accept your non-accredited diploma. Your child's going to have to take a GED test. Anybody ever experienced that or heard of it? It's happened. That used to be the standard line before 1998. It's not anymore, because I can tell you, after talking to the dean at Sullivan University in Louisville, they don't like the idea of losing their federal student aid.
All money.
When the admissions told my son 3 years ago that you have to take a GED test, and I said, no, he's not a dropout. He's not going to be stigmatized as a dropout the rest of his life. And in fact, you might want to research this. There's this thing called Our Education Act of 1998. If you press this, I might cause you to lose your federal student aid. And then I had a meeting with the dean, and he thanked me for bringing that to their attention. So I promise you, from firsthand experience, they can't make you take the GED if they receive federal student aid. But a private school, they could, because they're a private school and they don't receive federal student aid. So a bill that makes a diploma equivalency or a diploma equivalency bill would help in those areas. So I think it would be a good piece of legislation to look at, like Arizona did last year. Those are just a couple ideas that I've had, and I'm sure you guys have some. So at some point, when AC gets done with his presentation, we'll give you some time, and if you've got some ideas like that, we'll love to talk to you about it. If you have questions about AC's presentation, we'll talk about that. Or if you just have some homeschool general questions, we can address those as well.
They have questions about AC.
Or if you have questions about AC. Yeah, where's this guy from? All right. I will tell you that I am glad to have AC Donahue. That's this fellow right here. He is an attorney in Somerset, Kentucky, runs his own practice, volunteers time, and works with Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Probably litigated at just about every case in Kentucky. He's Czech's general counsel and a great friend of mine. And he goes around the state pro bono, defending homeschoolers and coming to things like this to educate you about the law so that he doesn't have to defend you in court. If you'll join me in giving him a round of applause and a warm welcome, he's going to come and talk to you about the history of the best practice document.
My primary topic today is to talk to you about the best practices document. It was created in 1997 to hammer out this document. That was the Christian Home Educators of Kentucky, known as CHEC, and the Kentucky Home Educators Association, KHEA. That group no longer exists.